In the previous episode, we learned how Belle was conjuring a story about how crazy her ex-farmhand and ex-lover, Ray Lamphere, was. She tried to have him declared insane, but her efforts to do so didn't work. So it's like a puzzle being put together. Belle gets her affairs in order, seeing her lawyer to write up her will just a day before her house burned down. In the weeks before this, she had Ray Lamphere arrested for trespassing 3 different times. She corresponded with Andrew Hugling's brother, Asley, and tried to convince him she had no clue where Andrew was. She tried to convince him that Ray Lamphere had been intercepting his letters. All the while, Andrew was dead and buried in her yard. Now, let's look at what's next. What happened after the fire, and what happened to Ray Lamphere. Welcome to episode 12, The State of Indiana versus Ray Lamphere. If you've been following this series since episode 1, then this will be coming full circle to where we started. By now, this fire has burned down the Gunness farmhouse. 4 bodies have been found in the rubble, a headless woman and 3 children, presumed to be Belle and her 3 children, Myrtle, Lucy, and Philip. After Andrew Hugling's brother came to Laporte, he found his brother's dead body buried there at the Gunness farm. This led to more digging and the uncovering of several bodies, including Belle's foster daughter, Jenny Olson. Now the authorities are looking for Ray Lamphere, although he was not hiding at all. He was at his job, which was a farm worker for John Wheatbrook. Ray was taken into custody on April 28, 1908, the day of the fire. We all know from previous episodes what happened in the weeks after the fire, and the families who came to identify their loved ones. We also know that Belle lured many men to her farm through ads in the Scandinavian print newspapers, and when the men came with their money, she murdered them, chopped up their bodies, put them in gunny sacks, and buried them in her yard on the farm. She also killed her 2 husbands for their life insurance. She also was suspected of killing her second husband, Peter Gunness's 7-month-old daughter, for the life insurance he had on her. Peter Gunness was a hog farmer, so he taught Belle how to butcher the pigs. It was said that the way Belle butchered her victims was just like a professional hog butcher. Belle was known in Laporte for her sausage. Now, at the time between the fire and Ray's first court on November 9, 1908, Laporte was torn between 2 sides. It was an election year, and the Republicans and Democrats had 2 very different opinions. The Republicans were hard set that the body of the headless woman was in fact Belle Gunness, but the Democrats were not convinced at all and said there was no proof as there was no head. The children all had their heads, so how could a grown woman's head burn up in the ashes? The state wanted to prove that Ray Lamphere set the fire with intent to kill Belle and her children. But after learning Belle was a killer herself, they had to prove first who was the woman in the fire. In the weeks leading up to the trial, the state had issued subpoenas for 40 witnesses. All had been found except Louis Schultz, the gold prospector who produced the dental bridge declared to be Belle's. To try to prove that Belle Gunness was in fact murdered, the prosecution began by calling on the coroner, Dr. Charles S. Mack. Dr. Mack was a graduate of Harvard and the Columbia College of Physicians and Surgeons, where he received his MD in 1882. Dr. Mack had gone on to teach at the medical school of the University of Michigan before beginning his private practice, the first one in Chicago and then in Laporte. He was the coroner of Laporte for 2 years before the Belle Gunness case started. Dr. Mack was 51 years old at this time, and he had recently announced his intention to resign from his medical practice and start a new life as a pastor in Toledo, Ohio. Presiding at Ray's trial was Judge John C. Richter of Lamphere, and it would take 4 days to impanel the jury. Find out how this started to play out in court in the next episodes. Thank you. Like and subscribe for more.